This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
At 5 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Dr. Sky Experience, proudly heard here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. As we move deeper into your weekend, I'm honored to be with you as we continue to explore many of the mysteries of the universe, from great topics and subjects from astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, of course, and stories of American exceptionalism. First, I'd like to mention the contact number. Get in early on the conversation, as always, with our special guests that make these shows, as you tell us, very important. The contact number, 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-9222. And don't forget, you can listen to past editions and iterations of the Dr. Sky Experience at WABCRadio.com, and also proudly to be part of RedAppleAudioNetworks.com. And not only this particular archive, but what about all the other great hosts that you hear on 77 WABC 24 hours a day? I'd like to thank our helmsman, as we like to call this, a magical starship moving through time and space. With the power of this radio signal, we thank Bill, and we thank Tony for navigating this big signal out to you, ladies and gentlemen, out into space. Hope you're having a good week as the political world heats up in many venues. We, of course, talk a little different, not better, but a little different, about subjects that are of importance to you that you may not necessarily think about every single day, such as how secure is your internet? How secure is the entire web internet? We realized that just about earlier this week, Amazon Web Services suffered a major outage, and they're the leading provider of cloud infrastructure technology, accounting for about a third of the entire market of the world. Not to alarm you, but certainly hope you're having a peaceful weekend. What about electromagnetic pulse? What's that, in case you're a new listener and have no idea? An EMP is a short burst of electromagnetic energy, most commonly a nuclear electromagnetic pulse, which is a high-intensity pulse of electromagnetic radiation that can damage or disable electronic devices. And just recently, as early as this week, the sun, our star, belched out another incredible series of solar flares. These, luckily not directed directly at the Earth, but some of the other planets in the solar system, like Mars, would be adversely affected by the blast. The simple point is, how secure is our internet and our technology today? You may find this particular radio show to be alarming, hopefully educational, to bring about some of the important stories that we'll go back in time on, like the Amazon Web Services, as I mentioned before. Down Detector, which of course provides you with information on what series of websites are down, previously showed user reports of problems at sites including Amazon, Snapchat, Disney, Canva, the McDonald's app, the New York Times, Reddit, Ring doorbells, Robinhood, Snapchat, United Airlines, T-Mobile, and Venmo. The outage was first reported earlier this week, that is Monday, 3:11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, in this particular Amazon Web Services U.S. East 1 region, hosted in Northern Virginia. A notice on the Amazon Web Services webpage stated that it was experienced DNS problems with something called DynamoDB, its database service that underpins many of the other Amazon Web Services. To talk more about this and things that you might be able to do to protect yourself against what's happening with the Internet, and hoping that you don't suffer any damages, short or long term. Our special guest is Chris Hoare. He's an official spokesman for Sat123, a leading provider of satellite communications and emergency preparedness solutions. With decades of experience in telecom, technology, and business development, Chris brings a unique combination of technical expertise, entrepreneurial vision, and real-world insight to the evolving landscape of secure off-grid connectivity. Born and educated in England, Chris began his professional journey on the trading floors of London in the 1990s. He quickly immersed himself in the fast-paced world that is of futures and options, developing sharp understanding of markets, risks, and timing. That early experience laid the foundation for a career defined by adaptability, innovation, and resiliency. He relocated in the United States in the 1990s and has been a leader in talking about an organization called SAT, that is, 123. He co-founded a satellite communications business. And with that introduction, good morning to Chris Hoare. How are you, sir? And thanks for being on the Dr. Sky Experience.
Well, good evening, Dr. Sky. You make me sound very good there, so the check is definitely in the mail.
Thank you. And I made a few bumps in there. Hey, we're all human. But, Chris, this is amazing. You know, I do the research here, and I mentioned to everybody on this particular platform that if you have, recommendations, and some people have sent me that, to get some exciting guests, we'll, of course, do our very best to get those if they're, in line with what we talk about. And that email for me, of course, is just drsky@wabcradio.com. And that's how the whole evolution started, that you and I are now speaking by, of course, promoting what you're doing out there. So talk to us on the most basic part of this. I mean, I may have just read something, and I was reading, ladies and gentlemen, because this stuff is very technical. I'm nowhere near a computer, programmer. I'm certainly not, in any way level. I'm not going to put myself down. But like yourself, you have a vast experience in this. So the point I'm trying to make here and bring out to the audience is describe in your world to us, maybe making it simpler, this Amazon Web Services thing, this big cloud failure that happened the other day affected so many individual businesses. And let's hope and pray that this doesn't continue to cascade in the future. And maybe, to talk to the dark side, by some nefarious nations either detonating an electromagnetic pulse weapon, doing cyber, attacks on our infrastructure again, water, fuel, you name it. Talk to us about how you got started in this again. This is fascinating.
Well, yeah, I mean, I started out in telecom back in the days when they had we all had long-distance hardline phones, if you remember those days. I'm sure you do. And, of course, that transitioned to the cell phone service, which then, was new back in the late 90s. But after being in the cell phone business for a few years, we ran into Hurricane Katrina, and then we saw just how vulnerable cell service actually was. And at that point, we started working with the satellite phone companies, particularly Iridium and Inmarsat, the two biggest at the time.
Yes.
And because that's what the guys from FEMA, they bought satellite communications. The U.S. military uses satellite communications because both those guys, when they go into an area or they go into a war zone, they know they can't count on any kind of cellular connectivity or hardline internet access or anything like that. They need to be able to access communications and data and internet regardless of where they are, regardless of what's going on the ground. And that's what satellite communication does for you.
Well, that's interesting. And on a lighter note, Chris was talking about the, hardline, and we called it in the telecom world, friends of mine that were in the telephone business, POTS lines, nothing to do with cannabis, ladies and gentlemen. But the other side of the coin is you see very few of those now. But in all fairness, many of those POTS lines were pretty darn good, a twisted pair or whatever they were. And I wonder, do you have any statistics on how many people or percentages-wise out there even have hard lines anymore? It seems to be going down dramatically.
It is going down, and certainly, of course, it has been replaced predominantly by cellular service. But you know what? There's still a use for hard lines, and we recommend frequently that people keep a hard line, especially if it's to an important building, something like that, because cell phone jammers are now being used by thieves of all kinds to block signals that will come from cameras or things like that, and to block any person from calling out for assistance. Cell phone jammers are unfortunately pretty cheap. A few $100 you can get a good jammer. But hard lines aren't cut off that way. And of course you can, if you know where they are, you can cut the actual line. But people aren't looking for them anymore. Because
I hear you.
People don't have them.
No, out of, say, 9 out of 10 people, I believe, that I know, they're telling me, no, I just use my cell phone all the time. And the whole essence of the argument, if there is one, is to be prepared. It's not an argument per se. It's a fact of life that with all the things we're about to talk about, and you, ladies and gentlemen, out there in this vast theater of the mind, radio here on Talk Radio 77 WABC, the number to get in touch with Chris and myself is 1-800-848-9222. You may be mystified by this technology. You may have questions, and you may have concerns. And the question I throw out to the audience is, how concerned are you, ladies and gentlemen, about the stability of the Internet based on the things that we're going to be talking about? So go into some detail about this event that happened earlier this week with Amazon Web Services. I don't want to misstate anything, so we got you to describe what really happened and maybe some of the things that people experienced, and hopefully nobody lost anything, but I think some did in the way of finance.
Yeah, no, certainly a lot of money would have been lost on the other side of it. People can't spend money, so some people might have saved a few bucks, their inability to spend it. But look, I mean, there's a lot of stories have come out about the Starbucks app not working. I experienced that. People couldn't use their Alexa service in their homes, so they were having to look up on the internet how to turn the lights on because, they just normally tell Alexa to do it, and it happens. So, there's the kind of funny side of it, but on the much more serious side of it, the reality is that Amazon Web Services is the force, the big money maker for Amazon, the company. Amazon last year did around $658 billion in revenues.
Amazing.
And out of that, $107 billion was done by Amazon Web Services, yet Amazon Web Services represents 58% of Amazon's profit. So, it's the real moneymaker for Amazon.
Well, just as stated correctly here, we want to say, and I think this is accurate, and you be the one to, make sure that this statement comes out in the best information we have, that it was not necessarily something from a foreign nation that tried to knock us down. At least that's not what we think. So what really happened? Because it's described here as they had some experiencing DNS, which is what? A denial of service problem, with this DynamoDB, a database that I'm reading here that underpins many of the other applications. So what do you think the source was this? I mean, did Amazon admit and say, hey, something happened internally, it's not from an outside source? What can you tell the audience?
Well, what we know that Amazon has said in their post-event report, which they often release when these things happen, they've said that categorically this was an issue related to an automatic update of the DNS part of the DynamoDB SQL, NoSQL service. Mm-hmm. And so just to put that in plain English, what DNS does is it connects a domain name with an IP address. And web pages and websites use IP addresses to be visible. So if you can't connect a domain name to an IP address, you can't see the website. And of course, Amazon Web Services hosts millions of websites, but in amongst that number, they have specific websites for the U.S. government, GovCloud, I think they call it, where they have, according to Amazon, over 7,500 U.S. government agencies rely on AWS. So that's one thing that should be concerning. Beyond that, we've got banks, airlines, the UK government's websites were all taken down by this as well.
I didn't know that. Wow. So it hit individual governments like the over in England. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, this ripple was felt around the world, and the problem is that even if you don't host everything with Amazon, if you host one critical piece of your infrastructure there and they fail, then you have what's called a cascading effect. Everything below that will then fail. So it's not just people. It wasn't just people affected by because they had everything on AWS. There were people who had some things on AWS, and that failed, and therefore everything else failed. And so on down the line. So it was a big ripple effect.
No, that's incredible. And again, I don't want to sound paranoid to this audience. Hardly. We bring guests like yourself on who can explain this to us, because my own personal opinion, which is just mine, is that I think in many cases we're obviously so dependent on all these things that are outside of our purview, outside of our control. So what can you do? I mean, I don't own a giant company like Amazon. I'm certainly not looking to, and nor am I blaming them in this particular radio archive, and nor are you. But let's talk the other side of the coin. There have been, describe some of, in your opinion, some of the worst cyber attacks that we've experienced so far in, let's say, the last couple of years. I mean, describe some of that was intentional, and that at least our government knows that we were being hacked or, cyber attacked, what have you. Describe some of those, if you would. So that's also a big problem.
No, it is, absolutely. And look, you've got nation states like China, Iran, North Korea, Russia that employ and boast about the tens of thousands of people they employ every day to do nothing but attack U.S. infrastructure, attack and steal U.S. data, and generally disrupt the infrastructure of this country. They make no bones about it. You can't say you can blame them when it's the lowest hanging fruit. Like, sending troops and missiles and ships is expensive. But sending cyber attacks is, by comparison, extremely cheap and efficient. You can do it sitting at home in Beijing or Tehran or wherever you are, and that's exactly what they do. And look, right now with the government in shutdown
yes.
and most federal workers furloughed, we have CISA, the front line of defense for this country as far as cyber warfare goes. They also have a large amount of their staff furloughed, and this is the front line of defense. So, we are vulnerable. Our enemies are paying attention to that. And look, whether Amazon is telling the truth or not, I got no reason to think they're not. But,
sure.
companies have been known to lie pretty often about this because, like, casinos don't like to admit they got robbed, and data centers don't
You're
like
right
to
on
admit
that,
they've been
Chris.
hacked.
Absolutely. Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, our special guest, Chris Horries, is official spokesperson for Sat123.com. We'll get into a whole dialogue on this. And in this particular interview, Chris knows this, we have him for 1 hour as we continue in our second hour to go back to the audience for about a week ago when we were looking to have Dr. Andrew Farnsworth on, and unfortunately he couldn't be with us. So he would like to continue in hour number 2, ladies and gentlemen, in discussing the story of what's happening with bird migration and the rest of your questions from this particular gentleman. But Chris, while we have you, this is fascinating stuff right here. Tell us what Sat 123 does so people can go there and learn more, and maybe some protective measures that they can help themselves out if they so choose to do so, to protect themselves from some of the things that go on in the digital world.
Well, I think everyone these days, I'm sure a large amount of your audience, has some kind of preparation plan with extra food, extra water, ammunition, that kind of thing. But if you don't have communications as a part of your prepping plan or your go bag, then I think you're missing something very vital. It's one thing when the lights go out for a couple of hours. That happens fairly frequently. But the truth is, if the lights go out, you don't know when they're coming back on. And if you don't have access to telecommunications or to the internet, then you have absolutely no way of foretelling what is going on. So what might seem like a standard power outage could turn into hours, days, or weeks even, potentially. And then you really start to worry. The key
Great
is
information.
to have the ability to communicate, and that's what satellite communications do. Sat phones used to cost $10,000, $20,000 and $30, $40, $50 a minute when they first came out in the late 90s. What we've done at .com, being in this business over 20 years, is we brought that handset price down to actually zero, free with activation, because we don't think that just the wealthy should be the only ones who can have access to emergency communications. So you can get a sat phone for nothing, pay about $80 a month, $90 a month. You get about 150 minutes. And the sat phone works everywhere. Like, it's important to point out that only about, at most, 10% of planet Earth is covered by any kind of cell phone service when everything is working.
That's an amazing number, Chris. I never knew it was that small. I mean, maybe many in our audience are getting, a revelation right now. I know I am, that I thought it was a much higher number. Repeat that again. What percentage of the Earth does have cellular contact?
It's around 10%. In the U.S., it's more like 7.5%. Look, I mean, I live in Denver, Colorado, right? And when I drive up to the mountains, if I park my car and walk off the road a few hundred yards, I don't have cell phone service. They only put cell towers where it's profitable to do so. And if there's not a lot of people live in an area, they're not going to put a cell tower there. That's why you have these big gaps. But satellite phones work on 100%, like the Iridium network works on 100% of the globe. You do need to be able to see the sky directly, but it will work anywhere that you can see the sky.
That's amazing. Chris, in many, many years, as I talk astronomy, we were being out at night looking at the night sky. We were watching iridium flares coming down, and that's another subject. Right. You'd see the satellite move, and then all of a sudden the thing would flare up because of the mirrors that would reflect sunlight. But I didn't realize, I have kind of gone away from looking. I don't even see listings for iridium. So you're telling us what? That constellation of satellites is still very active then, obviously.
They are, and they're still the biggest high Earth orbit satellite company. And they were the first, originally developed by, in conjunction with or by Motorola back in the mid-90s. But yeah, Iridium has a very powerful, totally global network that covers the Earth, as they say, from pole to pole. And look, it's been the communications method of choice for the U.S. military for almost that entire time, and it is the first choice of first responders throughout this country, and also outdoorsmen who know what they're doing. That's for sure.
Interesting. I wanted to get your take on this. Many of my friends are what they call ham radio operators, and they're telling me, among other friends of mine, we sit down over a cup of coffee or a beer, and they're saying, hey, you ought to go get your amateur radio license. And I say, talk a little bit about that too. Is that also, in your opinion, another viable alternative, that if the grid goes down, working on 2 meters or whatever they call that, is that, in your opinion, something worthwhile too?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got nothing but good things to say about that. I don't like to see this kind of recent creep in legislation, trying to bring more regulation to ham radio. I think that should be, we should all be free to use that. But yeah, look, anything that is not the mainstream. Look, these guys, whether they're in Russia or China or North Korea or whatever, or they're just independent groups going after the U.S. for whatever reason, they go after the biggest targets. Right, so that's what they go after. They're going to go after the cell phone networks. They're going to go after the big communications networks. There's not that many people who have satellite phones, believe it or not. Even though they're used by the militaries and so on, it's a very small number, and there is plenty of capacity left on the Iridium network. I think it only runs at about 25% of its full capacity, even when it's busy.
Oh, Chris, you're a bright star in my universe, because let me say this: looking and searching the internet for people that understand what's going on here and put it in simple terms. Obviously, we're appreciative of your time here. 1-800-848-9222. We see many callers coming in and calls coming in, but as we go to the hard break in just a few moments, we'll do our very best to get as many of you on in this short 1 hour. But I hope you'd come back on this subject as we can talk in detail, because, Chris, this is amazing to me. I mean, I'm not too confident. No, I'm confident with what you're saying, but I just wonder about this. I'm saying how easy it is to pull the kill switch on this stuff. And I don't want to alarm people out there, but the bottom line is, you said it so well. You must be or should be prepared. We don't tell you what to do. You should or must do, to whichever the choice is yours. It is your choice to be prepared, because look, you're right. Your cell phone. I've known so many people that sadly have passed away. We read all these reports where they went out into the wilderness. Something happened. Let's say they were attacked by an animal, or another two-legged person came by, and attacked them. What did they have? The symbol on there, or the words that said no service. Now that's not a good thing. So don't overly think that your cell phone's going to work everywhere. I don't think people don't think that. But Chris, you're bringing up some very good points here. But in summation, what would you say now? I mean, the situation, these things are going to happen again, like the outages here from Amazon Web Services. I mean, a quick cut to the chase on. Tell us a little more. I mean, they just need to be prepared, but go on your website. They can learn more about how to stay prepared in the sat phone world, right?
Yeah, they certainly can, whether it's satellite phones or satellite internet or other things like Faraday bags, which I think we can talk about in the next segment. Mm-hmm. But look, I mean, make no mistake, there are terrorist organizations, there are nation states out there looking to disrupt and take down U.S. infrastructure at any chance possible. These attacks happen in the millions around the world every day, from ransomware to phishing and on and on and on. But it's far beyond just single cyber attacks. You've got nation states that are implanting or pre-positioning software into equipment that is sold to the U.S. in, preparation for a potential attack on this country in the future. We've caught them doing this. We've caught them pre-positioning software in switches and routers and control planes, that operate on our power grid and our cell phone networks. Even cranes that operate at U.S. ports have been found with backdoors and software that could be used from Beijing or elsewhere. So this is not fantasy. This is not scare tactics. This is very, very real, and it's happening every single minute of every day, unfortunately.
Well, let me ask you this. In about a minute or so, the vehicles, like electric vehicles, let's go to Tesla. In your opinion, are they easily hackable? Or maybe I'm way out of line saying, I don't know what I'm talking about, but how hackable are those electric cars, like in particular Tesla with all its advanced electronics?
Look, I would say this: I am not a hacker, but anything that has circuits and can access the internet can be reached, by people who know what they're doing. I think the issue is centralization. We have a centralized power grid, we have centralized communications networks, we have centralized banking systems.
Yes, we do.
And that's what makes us vulnerable. Whatever it is, if it's centralized, it's vulnerable. It's a single point of failure.
That's amazing. Chris, on a old school way, sometimes I'd like to get a fedora hat, and when I dress up in a suit, go to a phone booth and use quarters and dimes. And you know why I liked it? Because you had the privacy of closing the door, and it kind of felt like you were in a secure place. And you know what? You'd sometimes hear the operator, probably in those days a female. I didn't hear too many male. Please deposit another 25 cents. But you know what? I'd try to carry a roll of quarters, and maybe that would help us out. Our special guest, Chris Orr, he's the official spokesperson, that is, for Sat23.com, 123.com, that is. And we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, with your questions and comments here on the Dr. Sky Experience, where we talk, ladies and gentlemen, about many of these mysteries that you probably don't even think about every day, but we're trying to expand our minds one show at a time. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
It takes 20 years to build your reputation and a few minutes of cyber incidences to ruin it. And here's another. There are two kinds of companies, those that are hacked and those that don't know it yet. Two quotes from unknown and very powerful as we continue to talk with Chris Horn, official spokesperson for SAT 123 at some 32 minutes after the hour. Chris, let's go to the callers right now. They've been patient on the line. Let's say good morning to Gary in Bayside. Gary, good morning. You're on with Chris discussing this inevitable situation of cybersecurity. How you doing?
Gentlemen, this show is leaving the audience spellbound. Chris, you are really a welcomed addition to the station. Dr. Sky, you're on the money.
Thank you.
Right after 9/11, I called for a new branch of the military. I called for a cyber branch because I see what was going to happen. We would have hackers, criminal hackers, government-sponsored hackers, Russia, China, Iran, all of them trying to upset our grid and everything else, our computer systems, and they're getting away with it now. And also, we got to really look at this real hard. You know,
yes.
They put smart meters in our homes. They could shut your home electricity right off, right from the utilities themselves.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
They don't have to go out and shut off wires. I mean, we have to go back to the Stone Age. Yes, everyone should have flashlights in their houses and radios in their houses. You just put a good flashlight on the table, point to the ceiling, you light the room up and put it on the floor. You light the room up, you have a battery-operated radio and make sure...
Yeah, be prepared. Right.
Be prepared, right. And also, your signals are going all through the universe right now. The AM signal carries better at night. But also, the people should realize that, you know, our systems that are being built and everything, a lot of it is not getting to rural America. They're phasing out the copper phone lines. No matter what we talk about. Landline.
You were right there, Gary. You said it because it's amazing. You know, I lost mine not by my choice. I mean, without naming the company, they were like, we're not going to support that anymore. But let's have Chris respond here, and then you get the last word, Gary, as we move on. Go ahead there, Chris.
Well, yeah, Gary, you're absolutely right. And I think in many ways, you know, we can learn from what the Ukrainians did in getting prepared for the inevitable Russian attack. You know, they went back to using things literally like smoke signals, like homing pigeons and so on to transmit messages,
Amazing.
Which may sound absurd. But look, if your infrastructure is down, you've got no power, you've got no other comms, you got to go with what works. So I think you can never be too prepared, and I think that's definitely a part of everyone's emergency plan should fully understand that you're not going to necessarily have access to electricity or water or telecommunications or any kind of data or internet.
Amazing. Gary, you get the last word. Appreciate your call as always.
This show is great. It gives the caller the last word instead of people hanging up on me. But still, I look at it this way. Russia and China, Iran, everybody, they want America to have open borders. They want to flood this country with third worlders. The IQ of America is going down. So that means the third world it will be in charge of America just by the voting patterns. They'll be in charge of the most awesome nuclear arsenal in the world. Printing press making $100 bills.
Yeah, right.
We make fun of people like Omar and Alex Kotex, but they'll be your grandchildren and children will be bowing to them because of the 65 Immigration Act. They keep trying to say like college kids are electing Omar. No, they're not. It's the third world through the 65.
Well, we got to be prepared, Gary. You said it so well, but we got to move on. But hey, always appreciate your commentary here on the Dr. Sky Experience. Thank you, and hope you have a good weekend. Let's say good morning to Deanna in Brooklyn. Good morning, Deanna. How are you this morning? I hope we're not scaring people out there, but we're doing our best to inform them. How are you doing this morning?
No, you're doing your best. One thing, when you recite the website, try to say it slowly enough. It seems like people always say it fast, and then it's hard to grasp. But
well, I will be happy to do that, Deanna. It is SAT.
The satellite phone sounds very interesting. The satellite, because it's not hackable as much as the others, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me let Chris respond.
Right.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. You know, these smartphones that we all have and rely on for absolutely everything come with cameras and microphones, and those microphones and those cameras are listening and watching us. And so, you know, you could be talking with your kids or your husband or your wife about a certain product, and then you'll open up the internet. No, guess what? There's an ad for what you were just talking about. It's not luck.
Yeah.
It's not a coincidence. These apps are listening, and not only that, of course, but we are being tracked, and everything and everywhere you go, Deanna, is being archived. So if the government or law enforcement wants to take a look at where you were last week or last month, they can just do that. They don't need to come and talk to you about where you were. They could just go to your cell phone company and get that information.
Sounds scary, Deanna, but, hopefully we're not scaring people. We're trying to educate. But no, continue. Have you had concerns with this? Tell me your story. I mean, obviously you're calling in. You must have some sort of major concern.
Sir, you guys are just so brilliant. I enjoy it so much. For example, they caused static on my landline, and then they laughed when you tried to get it repaired. I really want to get the landline back. And there's this New Yorkers for wireless tech, for hardwired tech. Something
That's
like
awesome.
that. New Yorkers for wired tech. That's what it's called. New Yorkers for wired tech. And I want to try to reach out because it seems like the big servers, they don't want you to have a landline, and I really need it. And then I also need this satellite phone. It's great. It's great to have both, but also you know what they did? They took our analog meters out. They upgraded the gas meters. They made them smart. They added a smart connection, but we did not authorize that.
Yeah, not surprised.
They did it without authorization. We want to get rid of that because a very wise electrician said the analog meters are much better because those smart meters, they run all the time and they're exposing you to a lot of very carcinogenic kinds of vibe, whatever that vibe is. It's like, it's...
Yeah, I know. I mean, I have a smart meter in my home, and I'm concerned about it. But, Chris, isn't she awesome? I mean, I just learned something that I never knew about, that they're looking at in their community, getting their wired, capabilities back. And I don't know how much success we'll have, but, Deanna, I hope you have a lot of success with that. That's awesome. You should have that, Right.
But the satellite phone is great. So please, it's available to everyone, right, in the whole country.
Well, Chris, go ahead and give her the website so she can hear this clearly, and I won't talk.
Yeah, it's SAT123.com. That's just SAT123.com. And yes, the satellite phone is available to absolutely anyone who wants one. They are free with activation. Anyone else is going to charge you, Deanna, from $800 to $2,000 for the phone, and then you're going to have to activate as well. We think that's unfair, so we give you the phone for free. You sign up, you're paying about $80 or $90 a month, and you're going to get 100 to 150 minutes for that, and those minutes can even roll over if you don't use them. But if everything else goes down, Deanna, then your satellite phone, you can take it out, point the antenna at the sky, and you can make a call, receive a call, send or receive a text to anyone else anywhere in the world.
Deanna, I hope that's helpful, and blessings to you on trying to get our wired phones back. I hope you'll call again, and most important, hope you'll have a beautiful weekend, and thanks for being part of the Dr. Sky experience. We appreciate you. Let's say good morning now to Stephen, going out to the state of Indiana. Good morning, Stephen. You're on here with Chris Hoare, talking about the inevitable and how maybe to protect yourself and be prepared. How you doing?
The white horse.
Okay, I guess we had tried to have a funny man on again, but hey, it happens every once in a while, Chris, and of course, because it's open to everybody to call. But this is interesting, Chris. What you're talking about here is so amazing. I'm so concerned about something else that I'd like you to kind of carry the ball on and talk about the September event that happened where the New York City police and many of the government agencies like the Secret Service identified some, 300,000 SIM cards that were put into some location that apparently their intent was, no real mystery here, to take down the New York City cellular network during the time when the United Nations was meeting. And that to me is troublesome. So it was like a SIM farm, but talk to me about it because I don't know a whole heck of a lot about it, just concerned.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It wasn't we should all be paying attention to. I've been trying to shout about this because I think it's kind of a canary in the coal mine. But essentially, a well-funded, well-organized group of people, whoever they were, put together a lot of money, and with that, they bought hundreds of SIM servers. A SIM server is like a regular server, but it can run multiple SIM cards, up to 100, maybe more SIM cards at a time. And when you put hundreds of these servers together and tens of thousands of SIM cards, or I believe it was well over 100,000 SIM cards, you can then generate up to, believe it or not, 30 million messages, text messages a minute onto a network.
Amazing.
Now, of course, what that does is it floods the cell towers and overloads them. It overloads the control planes. It overloads all of the backhaul, which connects all these towers together. And the end result is basically a blackout, if they're successful, a blackout of those cell towers in that region. And look, you can't just walk into a T-Mobile shop and buy 10,000 SIM cards or 100,000 SIM cards. You have to be well connected and very well funded to run this kind of operation. So this wasn't a couple of guys with a grudge. This was an organization that knew what they were doing. Luckily, they weren't successful this time.
Wow.
But I would say this time, because this is we've seen many of these dry runs over the last couple of years.
I'm hearing you. Right.
Yeah, individual, whether they're water supply stations, smaller local power stations were taken offline. And if you can do it to one, you can do it to them all.
That's incredible.
That's the concern.
No, that's incredible. And we got about a minute or two before the break, but I just wanted to identify from you to the audience. Describe a SIM card, because I'm sure many people out there have no idea what a SIM card is. I think I know, because I think there's one in my cell phone, that little tiny thing that you put inside the phone. What's a SIM card? Tell us.
Yeah, the SIM card is basically what gives you network access, and you're right, not all phones have them anymore. They now have electronic SIM cards in some phones, but the old-fashioned SIM card, you can buy them, prepaid at the store, or you get one when you get your T-Mobile or AT&T account or whatever it is. But you don't need a phone to run it. If you actually have the right hardware, you could just load up hundreds of SIM cards into one server, and it's like controlling hundreds of phones, and then you can do whatever you want with that.
Amazing, Chris. We're going to come back with you, of course. Proud to have you and call you a friend of the show. Chris Hoare, he's the spokesperson again for SAT, SAT123.com. And I'll say this much, ladies and gentlemen. I promise that this radio station is not going to affect you in any way other than provide you information about the wonders and mysteries of what's going on out there from many subjects. And now we're talking about the electromagnetic spectrum, from solar flares and maybe a little bit about electromagnetic pulse, as we continue with the Dr. Sky Experience at 1-800-848-9222.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
If you can't afford security, you can't afford a breach. Another great quote about cybersecurity from another unknown. 47 minutes after the hour, we continue with our good friend Chris Hoare talking about, so many of the things that probably not many people are talking about, but they should. And let's say good morning to Billy in Westchester. You're on with Chris Hoare. How are you doing this morning, Billy?
Oh, hi, gentlemen. You guys, the show is great. It's really, this is the best show on earth. I just have problems, not with the technology. A lot of people are afraid of it. They got to enhance themselves, whether you're an older individual or you're some young dude who says, I'm going to live off the grid. It's almost impossible to do that. We should have some shots for some of the elderly people to get more acquainted with their smartphones and everything. The copper system for the landline being phased out, it's expensive for them to keep that thing going, and they're keeping it up. That's why they're getting rid of it. And the copper lines don't move the data fast enough like the computers do and the cell phones and the satellite phones. But I'm more interested in how countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran and Russia and China and all these countries that don't really like us, how they're gaining access to America. It's almost as if we're becoming a colony for them, and they're using us, they're milking us dry, and we're electing people like Omar and Cortez and this clown in Minneapolis, the clown in New York City, Zoran. Unfortunately, people don't realize that our collective IQ is going down, and we're not going to be able to fight the computer hackers and everything.
Well, Billy, you're right. Before Chris jumps in, many people describe America, and sadly, I don't always agree. I don't really agree with this, that it's nothing but a big, giant shopping mall, and that so many people are just oblivious to the things that we're talking about. But let's get Chris in to jump on this, Billy. You bring up some good points.
Well, it is a good point. The reality is that we're all connected to the same internet, but it seems that our enemies are more focused on destroying us than we are on destroying them, maybe. I'm not privy to what the Defense Department or Department of War is doing, but certainly it is, in my mind, the absolute biggest and most realistic threat to this country and our national security. Again, if you look at what happened just this week, if one data region or one data center at US East 1 at AWS goes down and it takes nearly half the internet with it, then if I'm an enemy of this country, I'm looking at that, I'm saying, that's all I got to do. I'm sure these facilities are well protected, but nothing is truly 100% protectable, right?
You're right.
And so if you were to, instead of bombing military bases, I would imagine, and I'm not trying to suggest this, but I would imagine they have a good map of where these data centers are, and they would plan to attack them if it came to that. And we need to be ready for that. But on a daily basis, yes, we are being attacked, we are being hacked, we are not putting enough money and enough resources into defending ourselves, and I think we need to be just as proactive as everyone else in doing the same thing back to these guys who are coming after us.
You say it so well, Billy. I wish there was more time, but thank you for being part of the show as always. Appreciate your commentary. Hope you'll be with us in future programs. In the limited time, let's try to clear the board here if we possibly can, very positively. Let's say good morning to Diane in New Jersey. Diane, how are you this morning? And hope you're enjoying the show.
And I thank you both for a wonderful program. There are two things that I'm really concerned about. One is banking. I mean, our finances, forget it. I mean, we may have the satellite phone, but most people today are doing everything via the internet, right? All your banking, everything is done that way.
Yep.
That, to me, is really scary. And the other thing is the Real ID. I mean, with all the hacking that goes on, with the Real ID, everything about your life is under one number if you submit to the Real ID.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean,
it's like, every bit of privacy is gone, but it's more than privacy. It's your finances, it's your medical records, it's your photos, it's your life. It's an open book to the entire globe.
For ultimate control, right, Diane? Ultimate control by other forces.
We really have to get rid of it. I mean, we really do. I mean, I've been encouraging people to, if they have already done this, is to go to the motor vehicle department and turn in your driver's license and tell them you want a regular one. You don't want the one with the digital ID. The Real ID. And that's the other thing. You talk about a sleight of hand. All they did was change the definition. Instead of calling it a digital ID, they just said Real ID. And people were ignorant to the fact.
They slipped it by in the dark of night. Yeah,
unbelievable. And it shocks me that it was the Trump administration that did this. We've been fighting this since the Patriot Act, right?
Chris, your response to Diane, I think she's really, energized on this, and we like what she's saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, Diane, you're 100% on the money. Look, I mean, this is going on all the time. They call it the Data Safety Act. What does it do? It makes your data freely available to the highest bidder. I mean, this kind of thing is what's been going on in China, where they have the social credit score, where if you're not a good little citizen, you can't leave your own town. You can't go to this restaurant.
That's horrible.
That place. And that's what we're going to end up with here. And I don't want to see that. But when it comes to finances, Dan, you're absolutely right. Our money isn't money anymore. It's just digits. It's ones and zeros. And if you ask anyone who lives in Spain earlier this year, the whole country of Spain was taken offline by what I think was a cyber attack. But they lost power to everything. And nobody could go to an ATM. You couldn't buy anything, couldn't sell anything. You couldn't do anything because there was no way to pay for anything. And this is the problem with going full digital currency. I mean, I see it has its uses for sure, but getting rid of the dollars and cents, I think, is a bad idea. I think
Diane and Chris, I mean, we're running against the clock here, but let me say this, Diane. I appreciate your words. They're very important, as many other people have expressed big concerns with solutions. And what we haven't done, Diane and Chris, is actually, hopefully next time we have you on with You're Okay, I want to talk about the EMP side of this world. I mean, that's another horrible thing. You know, a suborbital atomic weapon detonated. A good friend of mine was Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, who sadly passed away. Who was he? He was President Trump's the head of a commission on electromagnetic pulse. And that's another problematic thing, because if you had an EMP blast, right, Chris? Right, Diane? You probably wouldn't need to worry about anything else anywhere, because everything electronic is fried totally. And let's pray to God that doesn't happen. Or going back to the Dr. Sky themes, the electromagnetic energy from solar flares, that's also a concern. But Diane, I hope we haven't depressed you by me saying that. But thank you for calling. I appreciate your time. Thank you for being on the show. Let's go to Lou in Long Island. Lou, we've got a few minutes. Good morning. How are you this morning? Let's go to Alexi in Queens. Good morning, Alexi. You got to be brief because we're up against the clock, but how are you doing?
Yeah. Dr. Sky, it's possible you can hold me over for next hour.
Well, we're not going to be discussing that subject, sir. We're going to have to change the subject. Unusual to the program, but we're going to have to do that because I promised a gentleman who couldn't be with us on the magic of the birds situation, which is also equally important to many out there. But if you have a quick comment, you're up to, you got about a minute.
I will call you back next hour then.
Okay, well, if you want to, but like I said, we're going to shift topics. But go ahead and give us a summation of this whole hour. I mean, you bring up all these good things. sat123.com. That's how people can get in touch with you. You offer solutions and many other things. I myself, Chris, have a Faraday bag. I spent time in law enforcement. And what we used to do, many people may not know what the Faraday bag is. You can tell us in a minute or two. Obviously, when we would do chain of custody, if you took an arrest and you had, evolved and effected an arrest, you took that person's property and particularly a phone. So you wanted to make sure that the signal couldn't get in or out. So it's pretty much secure. But Faraday bags, tell the audience in your words what these things are.
Yeah, look, two things. They protect you from EMP. They block all of that, and they also block people from being able to get into your devices. Unfortunately, you can be walking down the street with your electronic vehicle car start fob in your pocket, and with a $20 booster I can get from the internet, I can steal a number off that booster without touching it, walk up to your car and drive away. Wow. So that's one problem. But Faraday bags generally were designed to block signals and block EMP. So look, if you have a sat phone, you want to put it into a Faraday bag. A Faraday bag will stop all signals in and out, whether it's Wi-Fi, GPS, RFID, Bluetooth, all of that. It'll be protected. It also prevents you from being tracked, and that's a big thing for a lot of people because we're all being tracked all the time. But you drop your phone into a Faraday bag, and you cannot be tracked anymore. They can't see that phone. They don't know where you are. They can't hear anything. They can't use the camera.
That's right. And, Chris, I shouldn't admit this to the audience, but I had a boss at one time who provided us with these. And I don't know why he gave it to us, but he said, if I ever find out that you put your phone in the Faraday bag and I can't reach you, you'll be fired. And I said, you're kidding. And he said, of course I'm kidding. But the reality was, I know it works. And believe me, how I know it, you know better. I put mine in the bag. I have one across my office here. I don't really use it every day. I probably should. You stick the phone in there a while and put it there a minute and they pull it out and it says no service, right? So there you go. No service. So no radiation. Yeah. And if you want to sleep with your phone, which we had another guest on talking about the dangers of electromagnetic radiation, you could You could literally throw it in there, but just don't roll over it and crush it. But there you go. Chris, that's right. That's awesome, my friend. I appreciate you, and got about a minute or so. So give us the last word on this as we hopefully have you back, and with You're Okay, we'll do that. We'll talk more about this as hopefully none of these attacks get larger, but I'm a little doubtful. I think it's going to continue in force.
Well, Doctor, I think, unfortunately, this is going to continue. It's very profitable, whether it's for cyber criminals looking just to make a buck or for nation states to disrupt our infrastructure or our banking system or anything else, air traffic control, you name it. They want to see it all taken down. So we need to be more proactive, but as individuals, we can take action. Sat123.com, you can get a free satellite phone with activation. You can get a free Starlink unit with activation. You can get Faraday bags, bulletproof backpacks, you name it, all the stuff that, unfortunately, we feel like you really need these days. You can also call us at 941-841-0844. That's 941-841-0844. We're open 24 hours a day. And I would like to thank you so much for having me on the show.
It's always a privilege and honor, and you never know. I mean, we go to the next guest, but if somehow mysteriously that doesn't happen, it's happened in the past, not with this individual we're talking about, but who knows, maybe we'll be calling you back for the next show in a few minutes if things don't go the way we want. But thank you. I appreciate you. And we'll talk soon, Chris. I appreciate your time and keeping us safe. That's awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, we promise in hour number 2, we will, of course, be looking to talk to Dr. Andrew Farnsworth about the story of the birds that we never did finish, no fault of his, and we'll also give you an updated sky report, as we promise here on the Dr. Sky Experience, things you can see, the many mysteries of the universe, at 1-800-848-9222.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
At 5 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to hour number 2 of the Dr. Sky Experience. Always great guest, as you tell us. If you'd like to email me, it's just simply this, DRSKY, of course, at WABCRadio.com. And if you'd like to get in touch with us on this particular program, we certainly beam out, wide out into the universe, as many people agree. The contact number, 1-800-848-9222. Thanks to our helmsmen, Tony and Bill. They navigate this signal so it can be heard. As powerful as the signal is, not only here around the nation, around the city, around the nation, around the world, but I'm sure even out into the cosmos. As we talk in hour number 2, we want to thank our previous guest, Chris Hoare, discussing some of the problematic things going on the internet and how to protect yourself. We'll continue with that discussion. But a regular here on this radio archive, legends, on the Dr. Sky Experience, talking about something I find fascinating. Birds, flight, the subject of ornithology, is Dr. Andrew Farnsworth. He's a visiting scientist in the Center for Avian Population Studies at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. Andrew began birding at age 5 and quickly developed his long-standing fascination with bird migration. His current research applies technology, including weather surveillance, radar, audio and video recording, and monitoring tools, citizen science data sets, and machine learning techniques to study movements of birds and their relationships to physical, biological, and anthropogenic environments. He now joins us on the Dr. Sky Experience. Good morning, Dr. Farnsworth. Thanks for taking the time with us this morning.
Thank you for having me back again. Nice to be here.
Well, it's absolutely interesting. And, it's amazing, ladies and gentlemen. I was scouring the internet there, and I wasn't hacked or anything like that. Hopefully you weren't either, folks. But I read an article on a British tabloid, and you popped up on there talking about a subject that I really think needs a further clarification. We talked about it a long time ago. Tell us about the article about bird migration and what's happening and what the article is espousing from your research.
Sure. So the basic concept here is that birds that migrate are very well attuned to both climate and weather. And the fact that migration exists at all, that birds move from one place to another and then go back again to where they started, is all about really climate as a driver, right? So yes. The idea that, like birds are the canary in a coal mine, right? That euphemism is correct. They are sensitive to their environments and they can adapt to changes given large population sizes and such things. So the idea that birds can be a good source of understanding climate change was kind of at the core of what that article and a number of others that originated that article were about, was that we can look at the way birds behave and we can look at what's happening with populations, and we can understand something about, okay, climate is changing and how are birds responding and what does that mean for sort of broader ecosystem level function? How are all of these connections that birds exemplify between insects and plants and basically, many aspects of the environment. Basically a way to kind of indicate what's happening. That was sort of what was at the core. Yeah.
No, it's a great article. And again, it takes off after the interviews we've had with you in the past about what's really going on. And, not to sound conspiratorial in any way, shape, or form. It's just that there are effects on the birds. You're the expert in the conversation on this. And your research tells us true that what's happening. So again, migrating birds. This is interesting. Let's go into the discussion here so everybody can appreciate it and understand it.
Yeah.
I find these creatures to be most amazing because I can't jump out the window. I'm not Superman, and I don't fly. I don't think you do, and anybody else I know. Please don't try it. Right? Please don't try it.
Don't try that.
Dr. Andrew, on another lighter note, you see these people, and I don't know I guess it's real. They jump off mountaintops with these bat-like suits, and they apparently can fly with a, little camera on their head. To me, that's got to be the most amazing thing. So they're mimicking flight, but not really for a long time, right?
That's right. I mean, you think about they are soaring or gliding, right? And there are a lot of organisms in the world that can do that, right? There are squirrels and snakes that have evolved to do that, and lots of things can glide, go from someplace high to someplace low on kind of like that set wings or structure. So humans can mimic that too, but it's very different from powered flight and actually flapping, which obviously insects and bats and birds can do very well. It's a totally different thing.
Well, I sit outside a home where I'm party to, and it's amazing. You sit and watch these birds. I mean, we're in Arizona, where we're broadcasting from, in an area that's kind of remote from Phoenix. You see these, I gather they're hawks. I don't know, maybe they're vultures. But the one that I see is most amazing. It's just soaring, as people know. What do? They just use the currents, and they're expending little energy to do it. I'm kind of jealous. I wish I had that ability. Don't you, folks?
For sure. Absolutely.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But let's go on to this. Talk to us about this. I'm always fascinated. Our eyes see, as we talk about in the world of, the broad spectrum that we see, electromagnetism and all these things, visual light that we see, is a tiny little part of the spectrum of everything out there going into science. But I'd like to hear from you. Talk to us about how you believe birds fly. There's some kind of magnetic field they can sense with their eye, or maybe they have a grid coordinate system that pops up like a heads-up display. I'm fascinated to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, it's a fascinating and evolving topic. We don't know all the details on it yet, but over the past, let's say, 40 or 50 years, we've started to kind of identify that, yes, the magnetic field of the planet is something that to which birds are sensitive. And even though it's quite weak, there's a lot of information that they can derive from that. And so how might they do this? Well, there are a couple of sort of good contenders for what might explain that. One is this complex of molecules in the eye that, for lack of a better description, simply allows them to sense the magnetic field, almost see the magnetic field. So it's not quite the heads-up display, but the idea that you could, as if you were a bird, you could orient to the inclination and declination of the magnetic field and use that information to orient in a particular direction for a particular amount of time. It's pretty incredible. And it's as I mentioned, it's several decades of work have gone into this, and we learn a little bit more, I think, every year, but it is still not a given that it is correct. We think that this is what's going on, and it's pretty fascinating. I mean, we know enough to see that birds can do this kind of sensing. The question is just exactly how. And the coolest thing, I mean, the whole thing is cool, but the coolest thing about, I think, the most recent research is that there's a suggestion that much like other properties of things like quantum mechanics, it's almost like science is magic. I mean, it's really the incredible branch of physics that actually may be playing a significant role in the processes of birds using the magnetic field, that this whole molecule operation in the eye actually has very much to do with sort of the evolution of quantum mechanics and the movements of electrons, and really like incredible stuff. So,
well, I'm glad you brought that up, Dr. Farnsworth, because this is interesting. We all study, at least a lot of people. I have a fascination with this. I'm not the scholar. But quantum physics, when we talk about something called quantum entanglement, and not to put the audience to sleep this early morning, wherever you're listening, or evening. But no, in basic terms, the simplistic way of describing quantum entanglement is that a particle can appear in two different positions and maybe, as we talk about, move faster than the speed of light across the vast part of the universe. And why I'm saying this is, as I'd like you to comment on, it's so fascinating that it's something called superposition, but maybe birds have more, isn't that incredible? I would hope they do. Maybe more sensory ability to perceive these kind of things than we could ever imagine. So again, I'll say it, and I know you'll second the nomination. We should have respect from all the birds, from the pigeon all the way up to the mighty eagle. What say you?
Yes, for sure. This whole notion of quantum entanglement and superposition, it is really fascinating. And the fact that you can start to consider linking something that seems so abstract from the perspective of sort of everyday life to something that happens, obviously, with billions of birds that are migrating every night and presumably using information from the magnetic field. It sort of drives home, one, what we don't know, but how much even what seems like the most esoteric sets of discussions and abstract things can suddenly come back to be very much a ubiquitous feature of the way the world works. It's pretty incredible, I think.
Well, yeah, like I said, and I know you second denomination from the pigeon, and I will never say lowly pigeon. That would be an insult to pigeons, all the way up to the eagle and some of these other majestic birds. And then let's not discount the ability, ladies and gentlemen, for the birds to know the map of the sky. And we encourage people on the Dr. Sky Experience. Of course, our roots start about talking about what we can see and always what they say. Always remember to watch the skies. I can only imagine how a bird has an already impregnated map of the heavens and knows how to navigate by the North Star. And what about, Doctor, the birds in the southern hemisphere? What will be the mystery of their navigation if it's celestial? That's also another amazing thing to ponder, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, you figure that wherever you have the opportunity to perceive, if you're a bird, and in particular the night sky, and thinking about the rotation of, celestial rotation, sort of the apparent movement of those stars at night, there's information that birds can use to navigate, right? So no matter where a bird is on the planet, as long as there is a clear view of the sky, right? So hopefully there's not a lot of light pollution. It's a hard thing to do these days, right?
Yeah, I'll say. That's another problem you're talking about is birds having affected by bright city lights, right? That's right. And if birds have access to these dark skies and can perceive these patterns of celestial rotation, then there's all kinds of information available to them that whether you're in the northern or southern hemisphere that they can use. It's pretty amazing. A really, really cool system, and one of many that birds use. I mean, we talked about magnetic sense. We talk about this visual sense of being able to refer to celestial rotation. There's also acoustic information they can use, and obviously being able to sense different changes in meteorological and atmospheric conditions like pressure, and temperature. It's an incredible system of cues and sensory tools that they have at their disposal to move. Wow, Doctor, you have kind of a cool job. I like that.
Very lucky. I feel very fortunate.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, my friend, that's why we have you here. 1-800-848-9222. Your questions regarding the amazing birds that can fly, and maybe some birds that cannot fly. But this is fascinating, too. And also talking about other creatures on the earth. This is another one that really astounded me. I did some reading. I've said it before when we've had you. The dung beetle that runs around at night, you know what that beetle does. It is now been proven by scientists, ladies and gentlemen, ready for this one, that it has the ability to navigate on the ground by noticing the positions of the Milky Way. So you have to have a dark sky, and this was reported in Africa. That even blows the lid off the thing even more, don't you think? How can an insect perceive the motion of the Milky Way in the heavens in no direction? That, to me, is mind-boggling.
It's incredible. And I think it's just scratching the surface for what we know. I mean, dung beetle happens to be one that has received a fair amount of attention in the scientific world, but obviously the number of insects on the planet is simply enormous to think about, what other kinds of capabilities there might be. Fascinating.
Well, we're lucky to have you. And again, we always appreciate you're the go-to guy on this. And I find no other, but let me talk about this website that I'd like you to comment on, birdcast.info. And take it away, because this is talking about live migration maps of birds. This is fascinating stuff. Talk about it, if you would, please.
Yeah, so Birdcast is a really cool project. It's more or less 25 years old, and it's really started to hit its stride in the last few years. The whole concept is to try to showcase the spectacle of migration. And one of the ways we do that is to use weather surveillance radar to track migration, in particular at night, when obviously we can't see it with our own eyes. So we can use radar, kind of the indirect eyes, like this remote sensing tool. Mm-hmm. So to a radar, birds just like a big raindrop. And we can extract what is birds from what is weather on these in the radar data, and then we present the bird migration information on this website. And it's really pretty incredible. I feel very fortunate to have been involved with this project for a long time. One of the coolest things about it is finally being able to, in the last few years, just answer the question, well, how many birds are migrating at night? How many over the U.S., for example?
Yes. Wow.
Right, and this was an opportunity for a lot of hyperbole in the past 100 years, for sure. Everything from millions to tens of millions to billions, and so now with this tool we can actually put some numbers on that. So every fall, on average in the U.S., about 4 to 5 billion birds migrate across the country at night. So
what did you say? Million or billion?
I said billion with a B.
Wow.
You can put a big boldface, and capital B, all capital letters if you like.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. And even more incredible, there was one night a couple of weeks ago on October 8th when just on a single night, there were 1.25 billion birds migrating over the U.S. I mean, you think about, if you multiply the U.S. population by, let's say, 4, and then put all of those people on the move, that's kind of what we're talking about.
Well, they're lucky they don't have to deal with air traffic controllers, and no disrespect to air traffic controllers. They want to work, but the birds know how to migrate and navigate, and apparently they don't collide into each other. I would imagine that's a true statement.
But
right. Doctor, this is fascinating. I'm looking at birdcast.info, where I recommend people go as they listen to this radio show or maybe afterwards. I'm looking at the map right now, and not being the scholar on this, it looks like on the October the 25th, this particular date, it shows, ladies and gentlemen, a high number of migration of birds. The more yellow on the map, guess where it is? It's right over the New York, New Jersey area, heading south toward warmer climes. So that's interesting. That's fascinating stuff, right?
That's right. And specifically, where I am in Manhattan right now. So, I don't know, we're talking about one of the biggest nights of the year so far is unfolding now because conditions are good, right? Tailwinds are happening, winds are out of the north and west, the sky's clear. And over New York City, about close to 400,000 birds have passed so far tonight. Wow. So, we're on our way to a pretty large movement, second biggest of the fall, I think.
So if they were an airline, each individual airline, I mean, how would you categorize the type of birds? Do we have enough information to share with the audience about what types you think are flying, or not really at this point?
Yeah, it's a good question. We can't do it from radar, but we can do it from what we call citizen science data, which is basically just people out birding during the day and entering their observations. So we know what birds are around during the day in this area and nearby, and then which of those are migrating at night, and so we can kind of make that association. So right now, we're in this period where still pretty large numbers of songbirds are migrating. So lots of sparrows, things like white-throated sparrow and white-crowned sparrow, but also the last of these birds called warblers that are often fairly long-distance migrants, like from the boreal forests to, say, the Andean forests or the Amazon in South America. They're starting to still passing through. So really interesting time of year. It's past the peak number, really the peak in most of the U.S. Kind of happens maybe a week or two earlier than now, but it's still a really diverse time for birds on the move. Plenty of birds to see, for sure.
Well, it's amazing. You'll like me more, and this is not made up, ladies and gentlemen. The home that I'm sharing with my significant other up in the mountains of Arizona, 8,000 feet before I left, she and I both reminded each other to fill the bird feeder. And that was amazing because it's incredible. It's a large feeder, as people know. You dump a lot of that quality seed in there, and it's amazing how fast it goes. But I don't know if everybody's had an opportunity to be in a high, tall tree climate like that. It's just beautiful. And no matter where you are, you could be along the beach. You could be, of course, right in town, and you see the magic of birds right in front of you. Yeah. Something I did some research on, Doctor, I find fascinating. Where am I broadcasting from? Phoenix, Arizona, America's 5th largest city, soon to be America's 4th largest city, because we're going to outpopulate the city of Philadelphia, they tell me. But the namesake of Phoenix, the bird that rose from the ashes, I did my research and wanted you to corroborate this. In ancient Egypt, Herodotus was considered the father of history. He, of course, identified the phoenix in more of a prolific way. In Latin, he called it, and I'm reading this, Unica semper avis, which means in simple English, ever singular bird, a symbol of renewal and eternal youth. Because what? Where did this bird, it arose right from the ashes to survive that horrific death, and it was reborn. That's amazing, isn't it? What a story.
Yeah, and it's a myth, or let's say it's a story that likely has pretty strong foundation in many different cultures, right? It's the same sort of pattern in thinking about rebirth, and I often think this is just opinion, but that some of the early authors and observers of this were surely talking about, migration, actually, thinking about the return of birds after a period, when birds were not present. I definitely like to think that that's what it is. Whether that's true or not, there's been a lot of times since the first instances of describing the phoenix in Chinese mythology and Greek and Roman mythology.
It's beautiful.
And so on, right? But it is a wonderful story for sure, and we can certainly relate to it in many respects.
What a name for a city, Phoenix, the bird that rose from the ashes, and literally the population growth and everything here. I mean, among other big cities in the nation, leading in many categories as far as growth, business-wise, population, and all other things. But again, here's another one that I did research on, and we only have a few minutes before the big break here. But the Egyptian sunbird, Bennu, which is also, ladies and gentlemen, an asteroid that a spacecraft has visited. That's incredible. So the Egyptians, Doctor, had a great reverence for these birds. Describe Bennu, if you would. That's an amazing bird if you look at it in the Egyptology world.
Yeah, so these sunbirds, this is similar to the idea of sort of emerging from the ashes or burning some kind of a burning tree or that sort of thing. And it's interesting. There are a number of species called sunbirds now that are very different from the thing that is actually in Egyptian mythology, which actually looks sort of more like a heron or a crane. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, my understanding is it was a prototype for the concept of the phoenix, and that it was associated with Ra and was kind of like the daily rebirth of sunrise and sunset, Yes. And I love that the asteroid has taken the name as well. It's pretty fantastic. That's outside my realm, but I do try to keep up on that. But
you're fine. No, you're fine. You're doing great. And ladies and gentlemen, your questions, birding of all types, the questions that you may think, wow, you have a bird. You obviously are studying birds. You may go out to the park in New York City and feed the birds. God bless you. And they keep them because they have a right to live too, obviously, among all the animals here on the earth. If you have concerns, questions, or just an observation, 1-800-848-9222 is where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. And then when we come back, Doctor, I'd like you to get into a conversation. Our owner and operator, John Katzimatidis, is very much involved with the saving of ostriches. And I know this has gotten a lot of publicity, not only on this particular radio station, rightfully so, because in his words, and I quote, they have a right to live if they are healthy, end quote. And it's amazing because the ostrich story, I think, is fascinating. Maybe many people out there have a misunderstanding of ostriches, but it wasn't because anybody alleged that they weren't good-looking compared to other birds. It was a whole other story, and that's something I'd like you to comment on when we return from the break. And ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned before, a quick sky report on what's happening in the heavens. As the good doctor and I are talking about bird navigation, we find the moon now starting to appear into the west-southwest. It's waxing again. The Orionid meteor shower continues into the northeast and to the east, right around the time that you're listening right now, East Coast. The constellation Orion pours forth debris from Halley's Comet, and that's all because of the amazing comets that are out there. They carry maybe some of the seedlings of creation that many people might believe seeded the Earth with life in the scientific way, a process called panspermia. That's fascinating. The moon's at its farthest position from the Earth on the 24th. And how about this, ladies and gentlemen? There is a comet or two in the sky. And I went out and watched myself with a pair of binoculars, little Comet Lemon. It's in the western sky, literally almost due west, about 15, 20 degrees at sunset in a dark sky. If you have one, it looks like a little smudge, but it's traveling to the universe at a great speeds, like 160,000 miles an hour. All the great stuff that the Orionids are from, comets, and more. More, ladies and gentlemen, when we come back on the Dr. Sky Experience. Our special guest, we're honored to have him and call him a friend of the show, Dr. Andrew Farnsworth, talking about the magic of birds and your questions at 1-800-848-9222. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
No bird soars too high if it soars with its own wings. A quote from the poet William Blake. 32 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, your questions about birds. We go to our go-to gentleman, Dr. Andrew Farnsworth. And ladies and gentlemen, we know you're calling out there, and we do appreciate it. Let's say good morning, as we will, to Steve in Brookville. Good morning. You're on with Dr. Farnsworth. How are you doing?
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Doing good, sir.
Hey, I wanted to talk about birds, but you said, I don't know, a month or so ago about Jupiter and Venus coming up in the east.
Yeah, sir, that was a long time ago when they were in a conjunction, right? But they kind of separated. It's a shame.
They were very close. And which one do I see now that's coming up about 6 in the morning? Is that Jupiter?
No, that's Venus. You're looking at Venus. But I say it in a lighthearted way. Venus and Jupiter must have had some kind of disagreement because they both left each other, and now all we see is Venus. That's it. So go ahead, Steve. No, I mean, it's Venus that you're seeing. It's amazing. It's so bright because it shines by reflected light. That's why the cloud tops of Venus shine and send back a lot of light.
But, okay, I'm 67, and I grew up in the country where the sky is always clear, and I hunted all my life, and around anywhere I've ever been, birds don't fly at night. How do those birds... I mean, I hunt turkeys and everything, and they won't leave the tree. I can get right underneath them before it gets daylight, and they won't fly. So how do birds fly at night? And have any been hit by planes? You know how geese get hit by planes? You don't hear about that happening. I've never hit one with my car at night because owls fly at night, but that's the only one. I don't see how they fly at night when they can't see.
Well, Steve, your questions are good here, and I hope I answered about what's in the sky. That's Venus. But let's go to Dr. Farnsworth on this, because this is fascinating stuff about how they fly. He'll tell us more.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Steve, and for listening. So let's see. Let's take these apart a little bit at a time. So for turkeys and other game birds, you're absolutely right. Those birds are roosting at night. Turkeys are obviously roosting in trees quite high up sometimes, fly up there at the end of the night, or end of the day. Many other birds, really different species, like all these songbirds, much smaller birds, but also things like herons and, wading birds and so on, shorebirds. They will fly at night, and they can. They have a pretty amazing array of senses that allow them to do it. And sometimes they're flying really high. You mentioned colliding with planes. It does happen. It happens more than probably most of us know. There is a pretty extensive database that the FAA has on that, as well as a couple organizations around the world. And collisions are pretty frequent. Thankfully, they don't often end poorly for humans. They do for birds, obviously. And they cost airlines an enormous amount of money. Thankfully, not a lot of human lives.
Well, like the Sully Sullenberger incident, Doctor, in the river, in the Hudson River. That's a bird strike. Right.
That was exactly a bird strike. And that was Canada geese. It was birds that were moving because of very cold conditions farther north that kind of forced birds further south. It was a January event, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, birds are moving at night in really large numbers, and the ones that are, how are they doing it? Well, it's an incredible array of senses, everything from being able to see with their eyes, acoustic cues, listening to the low rumble of wind over mountains, waves on a shoreline. Yes. Sensing pressure changes for incoming storms, and then also obviously seeing stars and perceiving the magnetic field. It's pretty amazing. It would sort of be like envision you're a pilot in a plane, and you have all these things. You can hear what's happening around you. You can see the indicators. You can look out the window. And then when there are clouds, obviously you have all these other tools at your capability. It's kind of like what's happening with birds when they're moving at night.
Well, Steve, I hope the good doctors answered your question. You get the last word quickly as we move forward. Go ahead, sir.
I just find it really hard to believe because all the birds around my place, when it starts getting dark, you don't see them anymore. I just can't believe they can actually fly at night. That's bizarre to me.
Steve, thank you for your call. We do appreciate you. And believe me, maybe you'll see them as we're talking with the good doctor. I've watched flocks of birds fly at night, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They were a pretty high altitude, and they were like a squadron. They looked to me like a flying squadron of B-2 bombers, but they must have been large birds. Thank you, Steve, in Brookville. And I wanted to move forward on this. Yeah, go ahead.
You know what we need to do for Steve? We need to get need to get him, maybe he might have one already. It's a thermal monocular or a thermal imager or some kind of camera.
Yeah,
it works very well for seeing birds at night. Very well.
Good story. I mean, a good answer to a good story and good question from Steve.
Yeah.
What I wanted to get to is Mr. Katzimatidis, of course, being very much involved with the saving of the ostriches in Canada. Describe that to, I know you've done research on this too, and obviously that's awesome, but tell us what's going on there, because I find that fascinating, and it's a very important thing, but you're the person who I could ask best. Talk about ostriches. I have no knowledge of them. I see them. I've been to farms, ostrich farms, but I don't know much about them. Start with ostriches. Describe them to the audience.
Yeah, ostriches are incredibly cool birds. Very different from most things that we see in the U.S. I mean, envision, the adult ostrich maybe 200 or 300 pounds. Okay,
Ooh, so wow, that's a big bird.
So, yeah, it's a big bird. They can stand sometimes up to 6, 7, 8, even 9 feet tall. So this is a large organism. They do not fly, so this is something. They're flightless, and ostriches are part of what we call a radiation, or sort of an evolution of birds that have a very different structure internally. The keel that holds these breast muscles that allows most birds to fly, sort of when you think of like having a chicken breast or something like that, very tightly attached to that strong bone in the center. If you were ever to cook or look at a chicken. So it's a very different shape for these flightless birds. So they've evolved a number of different features, and ostriches are one of a handful of these flightless birds. So they obviously can move very quickly on the ground. I mean, thinking about running, 30 or even up to 40 miles an hour. So it's a very different kind of experience for a bird than you would sort of typically think. And just to describe them a little bit, so the males and females do look different. An adult male ostrich, standing 6, 7, 8 feet tall, very kind of like pinkish or flesh-colored neck and head, and sort of pinkish reddish legs, and then all of this really amazing black feathering with sort of some white fluff out on to the area of where the wing feathers are, even though they're not using them for flight and tail. And the female tends to be brown, and a very, very subtle array of cool colors, browns and grays, with the idea that they're a little bit more, let's say, adapted to be camouflaged into sand or dirt or dust colored, the birds originally were found, obviously it's not native to North America. This is ostriches in particular are an African species, and there are African birds. There are 2 species that are there, and the one we think most about is really sort of from Central Africa and sort of desert regions, but also in the southern part of the continent too. So really, really incredible bird for sure, and definitely one of an array of highly ancestral species that don't fly and are very large.
But this is interesting. So when you see the Liberty commercials for insurance, and you see something called an emu, is there a connection somewhere in the genealogical line, or they're totally different type of birds? Or is that emu a bird too? I don't know.
Very good question. Yes, the emu is a bird, and it is closely related to to ostriches. It's one of these birds that they call ratites, that are these flightless birds that have this really unique structure. And so it's a very good reference. It is a type of bird. Emu is the what I was talking about. Ostriches being from Africa, right? Mm-hmm. Emu would be a counterpart from Australia. So this is one of these large types of birds that's found in Australia.
That's amazing.
Species, but yeah, same idea.
But in this particular news story, which is obviously very positive to save these particular ostriches, obviously I don't know too much about it, but I know you've done some research on this. Allegedly, some of them had the avian flu, and I guess the Canadian government wanted to see them exterminated. Then some claim it was herd immunity. But our owner and operator, John Catsimatidis, has, picked up the effort to have, save them. And I think that's a noble cause because, wow, they have a right to live, as he said, and I quote, they have a right to live if they are healthy, end quote. But that's a great story, and to save any kind of animal from being destroyed. I mean, I don't know all the details, but I thought you'd provide us with a few more bits of information on that.
Yeah, it's developed to be a pretty complex story, and it's gotten, as you've probably seen, and many of the audience, maybe members have seen and heard, it's extremely polarized because people are, as they do, they're taking particular stances on only the science, or only the face, or only the the politics, or only the economics, and right. Focusing on only one thing, right? And so the challenge here is that ostriches and other birds like them, we still don't know all the details on this by any means, but there was some recent evidence that, let me back up a little bit. Yes, this ostrich farm in British Columbia had a group of, I think it was a few hundred ostriches, a number of which, something like, 20 or 30% were infected with avian influenza. You may have seen it as H5N1 or HPAI or anything like that, and they died. And so when that happens, the protocol around the world from public health organizations and departments of agriculture and so on is usually to call or kill the remainder or depopulate, whatever word you choose to use, the remainder of the flock and or the remainder of the birds, for fear that they could be a potential source that transmits because of other birds or mammals or people or any kind of transmission opportunity of the flu into other organisms. And so it's a really charged and dangerous and... Well,
it is, and we unfortunately got to cut you short on this one. But in addition to Mr. Catsimatidis, obviously Robert Kennedy Jr., Secretary of Health and Human Services, and Dr. Oz have also been, and I'm sure other people, involved in saving these animals, which obviously are the main contention here, but we talk about an ostrich here. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Our special guest, Dr. Andrew Farnsworth. Your questions, if you haven't gotten on the line yet, Carl in Manhattan, if you're still with us, Frank in Pennsylvania, and anyone else that would like to call, ask questions about topic, 1-800-848-9222. We'll be right back. And always remember this, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions you'd like to ask of me, potential guests that you'd like to see, we certainly are open-minded to try. Not everyone we guarantee. My email, simply DRSKY, Dr. Sky at WABCRadio.com. And we thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking this journey deeper into your weekend, opening our minds on many mysterious and mystical subjects. And we'll talk a little bit about the birds of Halloween when we come back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
47 minutes after the hour. Thank you to Chubby Checker, good friend of ours, and probably many of you out there. And boy, can he twist. Let's say good morning to Carl in Manhattan. You've been patient on the line. To Dr. Farnsworth. How are you this morning?
Gentlemen, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you full and 5x5. Yes, sir. Completely good.
Great. Dr. Farnsworth, Dr. Sky, you should be in all the classrooms throughout the United States with this information. I think we're at a critical phase. Oh, you're welcome. Because it's so knowledgeable. We're at a critical phase in human technology and evolution and the actual planet itself, the biosphere. And with AI and all the technology, gentlemen, that we have, I think that we have the capability as a species to do so much good, but it can work the other way. And of course, our fine-feathered friends, the birds, have developed from Archaeopteryx, and they have a long lineage. We have, and it seems like all the puzzles of the pieces you're fitting together with your show, especially tonight, how everything is interconnected.
Yes.
And I just hope that the technology that we have is used with the consideration of all the biology and the animals, the birds on our planet, and as well as the ostriches, the crow, one of the most...
We're all connected, right. We're all connected. Yeah.
I hope we get through it. My hope is great, but we're at a tenuous time because there's a lot of disinformation out there.
Oh, you said it. And let me get Dr. Farnsworth to jump in. I mean, he's the expert as our guest on this, and you bring up some very good points, sir, and I appreciate you. Doctor, go ahead, please.
Carl, thank you for bringing this up, and first, thank you for your kind words also. So I agree. We are at a really interesting and potentially kind of tipping point when it comes to technology and the information that's out there and trying to sort out what's information versus disinformation and making all these connections. One of the things that I like to think about in my little sphere of the world in ornithology is that we have all this amazing technology, some of which I'm very fortunate to use, like radar and other things like that, and a lot of machine learning and AI. But really what it comes down to is, okay, we can learn an enormous amount by sorting and filtering through those data. We have to remember to be out in the field with our eyes and our ears, right? We have to remember to stay connected to nature and that balance between the two, right? Learning what we can with all these amazing advances in particular computational resources and things of the like. We want to keep that in our back pocket while we're out in the field, you know, and while we're observing and like using all our senses to stay connected. That's the key, right? The balance between the two of those things. You are absolutely right. It's a critical time to be really thinking and investing seriously in that.
Carl, we thank you. We're going to run because we've got a number of people. We try to give everybody a fair chance, but thank you for being part of the Dr. Sky experience. We appreciate you. Let's say good morning to Tony in Clifton. Tony, good morning. How are you doing? We haven't heard from you in a while. How's everything?
I know, Dr. Sky. Hi, Dr. Farnsworth. Great show tonight. So when I love your perspective, and I think the first thing I think about when I think of birds is the Bible story of the flood. And the raven went out first, you know, to see. Noah sent the raven out first, and then the raven never came back, and then there were two doves, and one came back with an olive branch. And I think it's amazing because when we get so caught up in what could happen and what will happen, it's a beautiful story for those who, you know, look to the scriptures, because it really, the dove came back with the olive branch, which really was a symbol that, you know, we can trust that that kind of thing will never happen again, and for whatever. So I think it's beautiful with the dove and the raven. What are your thoughts?
Interesting.
This is great. Thank you. Thank you for bringing this up. I love that we've talked a little bit in the show about stories and scripture and mythology and the connection to birds there. I think it just speaks to this amazing connection that humans and birds have, and have clearly for thousands of years at this point, that speaks to both rebirth and information about what's happening in the world, and okay, everything's going to be okay when I see this certain bird or when I see this certain pattern, and we return to it again and again. It's really quite amazing. And you know, that the origin of that story, that olive branch story, I'm not an expert on it. I don't know too much about it, but I do know that, you know, this is thinking about the origin, the biblical origins, and the origins in Greece and Rome, that this is a long-standing bit of of knowledge and writing that clearly means a lot to people. And I think it's really important that we remember that. You know, all the science in the world, all the faith in the world don't have to be in opposition is a really important component of this, for sure.
Tony, we thank you. To cut people short on this, we're trying to get as many callers in. And ladies and gentlemen, if we do not get to you, it's our deepest apology. And we guys have time limitations. Let's say good morning, and we go to the city of brotherly love with Robert in Philadelphia. Good morning, Robert. How you doing?
Hi, Dr. Sky, Dr. Farnsworth. It's good to talk to you. I had a question for you, Dr. Sky, but in the interest of time, I'll stick to my question with Dr. Farnsworth. And I was wondering that you were mentioning emus and ostriches, and I noted the amazing thing I always thought about them was that they apparently broke off from the other the flighted bird families, before the extinction event 65 million years ago. Is that correct?
That's correct. Very good. Yeah, the thought is that it was 5 or 10 or 15 million years before that big extinction event. That's right.
Were there any subsequent evolutionary splits within the bird? I have one more question after this, but were there any other splits after that, like land and water, or?
Boy, there were a lot. Usually some of the biggest ones were just after that, and then actually in the period, sort of even in the last 5 to 10 million years, there were some major radiations that happened. It wasn't so much the difference between flightless or non-flightless or water and land. It was just this incredible emergence of diversity that happened as I think the planet changed after that major, let's say, insult or injury from 65 million years ago.
I think it's amazing that ostriches and emus survived that extinction event since they weren't flightless. But one more quick question. I understand, like, some birds, like the swallows of Capistrano, go to the same place, and I missed a little bit about what you were saying about how they guide their flight. But could you flesh out a little more about how homing and carrier pigeons work?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Robert, for your time.
Really good one. Great question. Thank you. I'll try to keep it simple. So swallows and pigeons, they're interesting because they're flying during the day. They have a lot of information to them available that's just visual, but they also can still use the magnetic field and also even sense of smell, sense of sound, and also polarized light. So where the sun is in the sky and sort of patterns, integrating all this information together is what they're doing. It's a little bit different, than what birds are doing migrating at night, but it's a combination of those things. It'll take a long time to get into, so hopefully
Thank you, Robert in Philadelphia. Always appreciate your critical thinking conversation points, and we hope to talk to you soon again. Let's try to go to Frank in Pennsylvania. Limited time, but good morning to you if you're on the line with us. Hello, Frank.
Hello. I've got a question about different species of bird. When I go to the ocean, I was always fascinated by seagulls. But there are ones that fly over the bay. Are they called bagels? But
See, it's amazing. Every once in a while, Doctor, we get a funny man jumping in the show, and the sound effects are pretty darn good. Let's say hello to Jane in Lynbrook. Jane, good morning. You're on the air. Limited time, but thanks for joining the Dr. Sky Experience. Hi, Jane.
Does that bagel come with a schmear or what? Anyway.
Maybe when it hit the ground, yeah.
I'm in New York. I can help.
Well, what I wanted to find out from either of you, or Dr. Farnsworth, since he's the expert on birds.
Yes.
I'm very concerned about these windmills that are being put up all over. They're slaughtering birds by the millions. And are any bird species being made extinct?
Very good question. So nothing is going extinct as a result of wind turbines, thankfully. And one of the interesting things about wind turbines is that, yes, birds do collide with them for sure, but the numbers of birds that collide are far, far smaller than birds that collide with windows, in particular untreated glass, reflective transparent glass, die at the hands and the paws of cats that are outdoors. It actually is a tiny percentage, really, really tiny percentage that are killed at windmills. They're really a small part of the problem relative to solution in terms of renewable energy. So it's a bit of a challenge.
Well, we have to conclude this hour. I do hate to cut people short. And Jane and Lynbrook, God bless you. Thank you for being part of the show. We move through time and space, and we're controlled by it. And that's the way it is. But, Doctor, quickly, if you have maybe 15, 20 seconds to give out your website or a way for people to get in touch with you.
Sure. Please visit birdcast.org. That would be wonderful. And if you want to email me, you can do that AF27. That's A as in Andrew, F as in Farnsworth, 27 at cornell.edu. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out.
Doctor, always a privilege and honor, and to everybody. We did a good job, I think, Doctor, getting all the people on there, short as it might be, but that's the way we do it. We move through time and space. Thank you. We hope to do it again with you soon. Keep us posted on all the migration and the wonders of the creatures that fly where we can't. I thank you for your time.
Good night.
And ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude this particular episode of the Dr. Sky Experience and Iteration, the last Saturday of every month, I am the MC and proud to be one on a dinner boat called the Dolly Steamboat here in Arizona. So what does that mean to everyone? We do a replay, one of the best of. We'll be talking about our interview with about the Mars candidate of what happened with the planet Mars. And that, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to learn, if you're in Arizona, come and visit us on the big, beautiful Canyon Lake Dolly Steamboat, dollysteamboat.com. And now we pass the torch of dialogue to T.J. McCormick for The Other Side of Midnight. We'll see you soon. Peace and happiness and good health and clear skies. Get out and see the comet. I'm sure you'll be able to see it with a pair of binoculars. Go to theskylive.com for the maps of the heavens. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. You can hear the Dr. Sky Experience Saturday mornings, midnight to 2 a.m. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy.
Download and subscribe
at BeBullish.com.